"But of course," said the millionaire. "Do you have a piece of paper? I write them down for you. That way you won't forget them." The young man had a hard time grasping his words. The millionaire surely couldn't expect a single sheet of paper to hold all the secrets, especially secrets he just bought for $25,000. "Sorry, I don't have any paper on me." "But didn't you have a letter of introduction when you arrived here?" "The people your uncle has sent me over the years always had a letter." The young man took it out of his pocket. He handed it over, carefully watching the old man's face as he opened it. But the millionaire didn't seem at all surprised to find it was completely blank. He took his pen, leaned over the table, and was about to write something when he raised his head and asked the young man to fetch the butler. "You'll find him in the kitchen, at the far end of that corridor over there," explained the millionaire. When the young man came with the butler, the millionaire was sealing the envelope. He seemed pleased with himself. "Our young guest will be spending the night," he said to the butler. "Would you take him to his room, please?" Then he turned to the young man and said, "Here are the secrets." He stood up and handed him the envelope. Then he solemnly shook his hand, as if he had just wrapped up one of the most important deals he had ever made in his life. "The only thing I must ask you to do is to wait until you're alone in your room before opening the envelope and reading the secrets. And oh, there's one more condition. Before you may read what I have written, you must promise to spend part of your life sharing these secrets with those less fortunate than you. If you agree, you will be the last person to whom I'll ever give these secrets directly. My work here will be over. I'll be ready to take care of my roses in a much larger garden. If you don't feel ready to share these secrets," he said, "you still have time to back out. But then, of course, you won't be able to open the envelope. I'll give you back your check, and you'll be free to go home and get on with the same life you've been leading up to now." Now that he finally had his hands on the letter containing the secrets, there was no possibility of backing out. His curiosity had gotten the better of him. "I promise," he replied. Chapter 4, in which the young man finds himself a prisoner. Soon the young man was alone in his room, a room so luxurious he couldn't help examining it. He went up the only window, which was very high off the ground, and looked out over the park. He could see where he had first spotted the millionaire looking after his roses with such tender, loving care. Night had fallen, and the full moon cast a luminescent glow over everything. He was filled with anticipation. He was finally going to discover the secrets to making the fortune that had eluded him for so many years. He slowly opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. The sheet of paper was again completely blank. He turned it over. There wasn't the tiniest squiggle on either side. He'd been fool enough to let the old man swindle him. He'd handed over a check for a mind-boggling sum in exchange for something that didn't exist. The millionaire had seemed so honest. He'd even started feeling fond of the old man. The young man realized that he should have been more careful, that perhaps there was some truth after all in the belief that totally honest people never get rich. He was forced to admit that he had no business sense at all, probably the very reason he was still poor, and now even poorer. A feeling of rebellion engulfed him, and he threw the paper across the room. What could he do? He'd let himself be lured into a well-sprung trap. He had only one alternative: to leave as quickly as possible. Who knows, maybe his life was in danger too. He didn't want to spend the night in this place. He decided the best thing to do would be to sneak out as quietly as possible. He tiptoed to the door and slowly turned the handle. but the door was bolted from the outside. The window was the only other exit, and it was about 30 feet above the ground. If he jumped, he'd surely break his neck. His only option was to ring for the butler. He pulled the bell and waited. No one came. He rang again. Nothing. Maybe the bell was out of order. The house was totally silent. He was a prisoner. He lay on the bed and the events of the day raced before his eyes. There was little he could do to fight off the feeling of absurdity that was beginning to overwhelm him. The blank sheet of paper he had bought for $25,000 kept drifting before him, as if bent on mocking him. Sleep finally overtook him. He dreamed of a stranger luring him repeatedly to sign a thick document of the utmost importance, as if his life depended on it. He protested vehemently. There must be some mistake. The document is totally blank.